Did Vikings embrace same-sex love? Unveil their hidden secrets and society's shocking norms in a journey through history's uncharted waters? In a time long ago, when the seas were ruled by Viking ships and mighty warriors, a secret lay shrouded in history. What if I told you that beneath their fierce exterior, the Vikings held hidden truths about love and acceptance? This is the untold story of Vikings and homosexuality. The Vikings, those seafaring conquerors from the lands of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, are often seen through a narrow lens in popular media. Yet, they were a complex society, embracing unique aspects that aren't often explored. The Vikings. Who are they? In the annals of history, the Vikings are often seen as fearsome marauders, warriors who pillaged and plundered their way across the seas. But who were they really? Picture a time long ago when the world was a vast and untamed place. In the midst of this, the Vikings emerged. These were nautical people hailing from the rugged lands of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. They weren't just warriors, they were explorers, traders, and settlers too. The heart of their way of life was the sea. The Viking longships, with their dragon-headed prows, were the stuff of legends. They roamed far and wide, conquering new lands, and their influence stretched from North America to the Middle East. Yet, beyond their conquests, the Vikings had a culture that was both unique and diverse. They were skilled craftsmen, poets, and traders. Their beliefs were deeply rooted in Norse mythology, and their society had room for complex ideas. One of the most intriguing aspects of Viking culture was their acceptance of alternative lifestyles. Unlike some societies of their time, the Vikings had a more open view of love and relationships. This included acceptance of same-sex conduct in their society. So, what made the Vikings so accepting? It was a blend of their adventurous spirit, their deep connection with nature, and their unwavering belief in individual freedom. In the Viking world, love was seen as a force that transcended gender, a force that connected people in ways that went beyond societal norms. The Vikings were not just warriors. They were sailors, traders, settlers, and explorers. They lived and thrived in a world filled with myths and legends, and their culture was as vast and diverse as the seas they navigated. Vikings and homosexuality. Amid the thunderous roars of Viking battles and the clinking of their legendary longships, there's a side to their history often kept in the shadows. It's a story about love and acceptance in an era of warriors and conquerors. Welcome to the heart of Viking attitudes toward homosexuality. The Vikings were known for their fierce reputation, but within their ranks lay a level of openness that might surprise you. Unlike modern times, they didn't have specific words for homosexuality as we do today. Yet, hints and whispers of same-sex conduct can be found in their sagas and stories. These weren't people confined by rigid definitions. Instead, they lived in a world where love and relationships were as unpredictable as the northern winds. Same-sex unions were, in many ways, accepted within Viking society. It wasn't about labels, but rather the connections formed between individuals. Evidence of same-sex conduct, whether physical or emotional, appears in various tales from their sagas. These stories often focus on the strength of the bond between two people rather than their gender. It was the depth of connection that mattered. In Viking society, dominance in relationships was prevalent. But these power dynamics were not defined by gender. They were shaped by personal qualities and attributes. Vikings placed great importance on loyalty and honor, and these principles extended to their relationships, regardless of the gender of the individuals involved. On their famous raids and conquests, the behavior of Viking men could be quite different from what you might expect. It wasn't uncommon for same-sex relationships to form among warriors during these journeys. These connections were seen as a way to strengthen bonds and camaraderie within the group. However, it wasn't all acceptance and open-mindedness. The Vikings had a sharp tongue, and they weren't afraid to use it. Insults related to homosexuality could lead to harsh consequences, including physical violence or fines. The thin line between acceptance and ridicule was a reminder that while same-sex relationships existed in Viking society, they weren't without their challenges. Relationship between men. In the heart of Viking society, the bonds between men ran deep. But before you assume, these connections were more complex than simple friendships. Norse society viewed male-male relationships through a distinctive lens. These relationships weren't entirely free of constraints. While Vikings embraced camaraderie and brotherhood, they also understood the importance of fulfilling their conjugal responsibilities. Marriage and raising a family were highly valued. This meant that even though men could form strong emotional connections, they couldn't let these bonds interfere with their duty to their wives and children. When it came to dominance in these relationships, it wasn't always an equal footing. Power dynamics often played a role. The Viking men behaved differently on their raids, showing strength and valor, but insults and challenges could change everything. If a man's honor was slighted, it could lead to deadly consequences. In Viking society, certain words and slurs related to homosexuality were not to be taken lightly. Penalties were imposed for those who used them carelessly, further underscoring the complexity of how these relationships were perceived. But the Vikings didn't just see one side of the coin. They were well aware that love and desire could be felt between men. In their sagas and stories, there are hints of same-sex conduct, suggesting an acceptance of these relationships. It was a world where men could love and care for each other deeply, as long as they didn't forget their societal duties. Relationships between women. Now let's set sail on a voyage into the lesser-known aspects of Viking society, where women's relationships held secrets of their own. While much of Viking history seems to focus on the fierce exploits of male warriors, women too played significant roles in their society. In the Viking Age, women were not confined to the shadows. They enjoyed a surprising degree of freedom, independence, and authority. Viking wives, for instance, had the power to manage their households and even inherit property. This financial independence led to unique relationships among Viking women. It's worth noting that there isn't a wealth of explicit information about lesbianism in Viking culture, but hints in sagas and historical accounts suggest a degree of tolerance towards women forming close bonds with other women. These bonds weren't necessarily romantic or sexual, but they held emotional depth. In a world where male warriors often went on long journeys, Viking women could find themselves forming bonds and alliances with other women. These relationships were more akin to deep friendships and could have been motivated by the practical need for support and companionship during the absence of husbands or male family members. While it's challenging to find direct evidence of Viking women's romantic relationships with one another, the society's fluid approach to relationships and the autonomy granted to women created a fertile ground for various kinds of connections. The restrictions. As the tides of time carried the Vikings into the Christian era, their attitudes towards homosexuality faced stormy waters. Christianity, with its own beliefs and moral codes, swept through their lands, challenging the acceptance of same-sex relationships. The impact of Christianization was profound. The old Icelandic homily book, a collection of Christian sermons, condemned same-sex relationships. The new faith's teachings were clear. Such unions were sinful. The once accepted conduct of the Vikings began to face fierce scrutiny. Punishments, too, were introduced. Laws against male and female same-sex intercourse became more severe. Christian leaders demanded strict adherence to their doctrine, and those who defied it were met with penalties. The Vikings were caught between their ancient customs and the demands of their new faith. Norse mythology, rich with its own tales and legends, also bore witness to a changing world. The old beliefs, which had once allowed for the diversity of human relationships, began to fade. Yet, amidst this changing landscape, traces of queerness persisted in Norse mythology. Stories like the legendary Norse trickster, Loki, who was known for his fluid gender and sexual identity, reveal the complexities of their cultural heritage. Despite the Christian tide, a thread of diversity and acceptance still lingered, reminding us that history is never black and white. The Christian era brought restrictions and condemnation, but it couldn't entirely extinguish the embers of the Vikings' once accepted attitudes towards homosexuality. The evolution of their society was a testament to the powerful forces of change, belief, and adaptation. In exploring the impact of Christianization, we uncover the intricate tapestry of history, where the past isn't forgotten, but woven into the present. And that's it from this video. If you enjoyed watching, then please leave a like and subscribe for more content. And as always, thanks for watching.